What is a dynasty? Welcome, everybody, to Michigan Football at the Voice of College Football. I am one of your post-game hosts, Desmond. I've got my partner, Dre, here with us, and we also have Mark Rogers with us as well. Before we get started, please like and subscribe to the channel, not only the Michigan Football channel, but also Mark's main channel at the Voice of College Football. And also, you should see down in the description an opportunity to join Mark's Discord, where you can hop in and join the chat, the discussion, and be part of a very exclusive community. So, gentlemen, how are we doing today? Dre, how you doing, man?
Good. Good. Thank you.
All right. Mark, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Good to be here. And, we'll let everybody know that we believe our start time is going to be 5:30 Eastern time. We announced that on Twitter and also right here on the community page of the YouTube channel, but 5:30 Eastern every Wednesday. So I got to get my swings in a hurry before I got to go.
Yes. So perfect. And with that, want to dive right into it. The Mark and I were just talking just a minute ago, but I was listening to an earlier podcast today, and a topic came up about just the difference of college football coaches and NFL football coaches and the personality difference that is needed for each industry, let's call it. But essentially, the topic came up that, talked about dynasties, and one of the coaches that was mentioned was Barry Switzer was one of them that was mentioned, Nick Saban, and also Bo Schembechler. And it made me think about the topic of today, talking about that. Would you consider the time that Bo spent at Michigan, would you consider that a dynasty? And it was a very interesting topic, interesting thing. So, Dre, I know I'm dropping this on you right now, so I'll give you a minute, but want to kick it to Mark and get your thoughts. Like, would you consider Bo Schembechler's time at Michigan, would you consider that a dynasty?
I will start out by saying that I believe that if we took a poll, that most people would consider it, if they were neutral fans, that they would consider needing to win whatever the championship is in the sport, the Super Bowl, the World Series, a national championship in college football, to have a dynasty. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that a couple things come into play. Of course, winning comes into play, and then also length of time, the duration. And for Bo Schembechler, he was at Michigan, 1969 through 89, I believe 21 seasons. I was going to look up his record, but he's one of those guys in Michigan football during that time. I bet I could practically recite his record year to year at Michigan. Ohio State and Michigan had a crazy back and forth when he first took over. So his first year at Michigan, 1969, they were a huge underdog to Ohio State. Ohio State was number one, consensus number one. They had won the national championship, Ohio State, the year before. Michigan's a 17-point underdog, and that's pretty much was Bo's arrival that they pulled off one of the great upsets in college football history, and he beat Ohio State his first year in 69 to go to the Rose Bowl. And then what ensued was the 10-year war, which was so special because you had Woody Hayes, Bo Schembechler. Schembechler was a disciple of Woody Hayes and coached under him and had so much respect for him. But then he goes to the rival Michigan, and the legend has it that even though they were close for their entire lives, they did not speak a word for 10 years, except for shaking hands at midfield and just saying kind of good luck and turning around. And that's the way it was for 10 years. And there were seasons in which Michigan was, in a sense, the unluckiest football team in the country. There was a 4-year span where they lost to Ohio State by, 2 or 3 points, 3 of those 4 years. The other year was a tie in which the Big Ten voted and sent Ohio State to the Rose Bowl, went against its own rule and sent Ohio State to the Rose Bowl, even though Ohio State had gone to 3 consecutive Rose Bowls. So there was a 4-year run where Michigan didn't lose a game except for to Ohio State. Did not lose a football game. They went like 31-3 or whatever that adds up to over the course of 3 seasons into 4 seasons. And then the other game they didn't lose. They went like 10-1, and they just got shut out of the Rose Bowl, therefore shut out of a national championship opportunity. And of course, there was no playoff or BCS championship, and it was a vote. But I'll kick it to Dre because I could go on about this forever. I will state that Michigan football just lived in the top 10 during that time. And as Desmond let us know before we started to record, 13 Big Ten championships for Bo Schembechler in 20 years is ridiculous, especially with having a power like Ohio State in the league. Now, some of those were shared championships, so if you add them all up, it's going to come out to more than 20. But yeah, I consider that a dynasty, and it was just a little different age of college football, and maybe in a sense more difficult to win national championships because Michigan would have played in a playoff probably half of those 21 seasons under Bo Schembechler.
Dre, what are your thoughts?
For one, can you hear me?
You're a little muffled.
How about now? Is that better?
Perfect.
There we go.
All right. So what I wanted to say is, for one, the word dynasty cannot be used too lightly. Because to me, a dynasty, for one, is consistency, it's dominance. And typically, when you think about dynasties in the history of sports across the board, whether it's college level, college football, college baseball, basketball, NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL, etc., you typically don't have to think about too much. If someone says, "Is this team a dynasty?" Like if I was to say to you, in the '60s, was the Boston Celtics a dynasty? That'll be a consensus yes. 11 championships where Russell had. You know, if I was to say that the Alabama Crimson Tide under Nick Saban is a dynasty, there's no one's going to say that they're not. You know, you're talking about 10 plus years, almost 20 years of consistent dominance, of multiple championships. So I think when you put in Bo Schembechler's era at Michigan, you try to connect that with the word dynasty. I don't think it checks any of those boxes. Yeah, maybe consistency in terms of, win total per year. But, is it memorable? Is it beyond reproach in terms of, is it like you don't have to think about it? If you have to think about a team, if a team is a dynasty, then they're probably not a dynasty. That's the way I look at it.
Do you think that the recent success, and you mentioned Nick Saban, do you think the recent success of Nick Saban of not only having, winning dominance in the SEC, but also winning multiple championships, do you think that has skewed your view of what a dynasty is? Or do you think it's impacted your view of it at all?
His recent success?
Just because of, he's recent in relation to Bo Schembechler.
No, not necessarily. I mean, I think that, you could put Nick Saban's run in any era, even the era that I didn't grow up watching, and I still look at it statistically. Like I didn't have to just experience it. And with Saban, I experienced it, watching it firsthand, and I also have the statistical data to back up that feeling, right, and back up that line of thinking. You can put Saban in another era, and even if I didn't grow up watching it, just looking at the statistics of it, I'm like, yeah, that's without a doubt a dynasty. Barry Bryant's era at Alabama, you could say probably is a dynasty, right? You think about, Greg Popovich, era as the Spurs head coach, you say is dominant. He had a dynasty, under that, right? So I think it's just, do I have to think about it? Is it clear as day? Right. And I just don't think that Bo Schembechler, think about his bowl record, right? It's just not enough. It's too much questions and not enough clear-cut answers without debate for me to call that a dynasty. Not even close.
So what everything Dre just said, I think, is legitimate and valid. I don't think there's a clear-cut answer, but I think it's clear in his mind, and I all that makes sense to me. But then I would question Michigan's status as an elite football program. And I just don't mean now, I would mean all time, because Bo Schembechler is just as quickly as, Dre, you're able to point out a dynasty and then discard other examples as non-dynasties. Michigan's greatest football coach of all time is Bo Schembechler. Nobody. That's without question as well. And I was searching for coaches that have not won national championships, and that's difficult to do in terms of, okay, who's a great football coach? Woody Hayes, Urban Meyer, Nick Saban, Bear Bryant, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We could keep going. Oklahoma coaches, USC coaches. And I'm trying to find an equal to Bo Schembechler who did not win a national championship, and that's tough to do. So he is in a kind of different slot there. But all of those guys ran dynasties, to my definition, and it sounds like the Dre's definition. But then if your greatest football coach of all time didn't have a dynasty, I don't know what that says about the success of the program overall.
Well, I think the brand of the program is based on longevity, not based on, and not based on, championships. Like I don't agree, Mark. I don't think you can have dynasty without championships being the center of it. Because dynasty to me is not just good for a long time. Dynasty is that you are great for a long time. And within that time period, you were able to be great with different regimes coming and going, different adversaries coming and going. And with through it all, you still won, right? Think about, Saban's era at Alabama, the programs that have risen and fallen during this dominance. He dealt with, LSU in their prime. He's dealt with Florida. Well, not really. He kind of got started after Florida, but he's dealt with, now he's dealing with Georgia. He's dealt with Clemson in their prime. They might come back, but we'll see. He's been able to withstand a Florida State, becoming pretty good for a couple of years. He's been able to withstand all of that and still continue to dominate this pretty much the last 20 years. So I just that's what I think about when I think of a dynasty, and I could take that to to baseball. If I was think of a dynasty, I'll think of the Yankees in the early '90s. Going against the Braves. Beating the Mets. All these teams that were really good in that era, and they won I think from '93 to '97, they won 3 or 4 World Series or something crazy like that. So I mean, it's rare that you use the word dynasty, and the reason why is because it's so hard to do, and it's because it's that special.
So I've got 2 questions for you. Number 1, would you consider Pete Carroll's time at USC a dynasty?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Would you consider Pete Carroll's time at USC a dynasty?
No, of course not.
No.
Yeah, 1 national title.
Of course not.
No,
They won 2 national titles.
Fine, two national titles. How long?
Okay.
How long was the tenure? How long was it?
01 through 09, 9 seasons. They win 2 national titles, and they're basically in the top 4 every year.
And they lost another national championship game?
Yeah,
they lost to Texas. I remember Texas in 05, right?
Would have won 3 consecutive.
Yes, they won 2 in a row. Yeah, and then lost the third. So in that case, is there a number of is there a certain tenure that's needed in order to qualify in your eyes as a dynasty? Do you need to be 8 years in a position, 10 years?
I don't think a dynasty is. I think a dynasty can't just be one peak. I think a dynasty has to be multiple peaks, right? And just because you're peaking doesn't mean you have to become bad. I mean, you peak and you're really, really good, and then you're able to withstand just the test of time. I think and multiple really good adversaries challenging you. And you know what? The more I think about your question you asked earlier, does Saban really skew my view of a dynasty? Probably, because it's not it is. And maybe if Saban didn't happen to Alabama, maybe I would view USC as more of a dynasty, because I'm just now I've raised my bar what a true dynasty is, right? And I'm just man, almost going on 20 years, maybe I think it's about closer to 14 to 15, but almost going on 20 years, and you haven't missed a beat. You've won more than you probably lost, or pretty close to, or at least 50-50 over the last 15 years. and it's just like, and yet we never time. But I don't know. I just think that when I compare other teams to Alabama, and I'm just like, man, I just don't know if USC or anybody else really compares.
I think he has skewed your view. Sorry,
Probably,
go ahead, Mark.
probably. The more I think about it, I think you're right.
I think if you take Pete Carroll's accomplishments at USC and everything that he did and you put it in a playoff era, it's arguable that it's as good as Nick Saban.
I agree with that.
His record's pretty much the same. He just didn't have
but
an
he had the
opportunity.
BCS, right?
Yeah, he just got kicked out of finishing number 3 in the country a bunch of times and didn't get to certain national championship games.
And at their peak, I'm not sure even the years they didn't get there.
How strong was the Pac-10 at that time? How strong was the Pac-12 now? How strong was the Pac-12 at that time?
But is that so? A couple things. Number one, that's not his responsibility. Number one, he can't control that. But I know they played Notre Dame every year, which that game was kind of close. A couple of the years, the Bush push. But I mean that's not because even the SEC, I think overall the SEC has down years too. But
I disagree. The SEC has at least one legitimate contender every year, and maybe.
Well, I'm saying so a couple things. Number one, if Alabama, right, Nick Saban is the favorite, right, in the conference, and it's just another maybe. Well, some years they don't play Georgia in the regular season. Sometimes they only get them if Georgia makes it to the SEC championship, which what year that was. Two was freshman year, right? They didn't play Georgia in the regular season, just in the national championship. So they get the so. Long story short, what I'm saying is every year Nick Saban's not going through a buzzsaw. There's usually some tough games in there, but it's not as if every single year LSU is top 4, top 5 in the country. It's only sometimes. But that's a very interesting point of view on Pete Carroll, because I would definitely say Pete Carroll had a dynasty at USC.
I don't like this. I don't like this. The way the question. It's like my answer is saying that Pete Carroll wasn't extremely successful. I'm not saying that at all.
No.
I just think for me, I think dynasty is such a special and rare label to have over in there.
Agreed.
It's not just being good for a long time. It's being great. It's being transcended. And absolutely, you can say, the Pete Carroll's era at USC is a footnote in the history. You can't tell the story of college football without mentioning
Pete Carroll at USC. Yeah.
At USC. I understand that. So he's really close. And maybe if I thought about it, I could say yes. But, it was really interesting. And you said that, Desmond. You asked that question, and I guess I wasn't really prepared in my mind to really think about it. The more I was talking, and I realized that Saban and Alabama probably have really skewed, the way I view a dynasty, especially in the context of college football.
Yeah. Me, I mean, with Nick Saban, I mean, when you break down the consistency, he's still to this day, to this point, to this year, he has never had a player come into the program, stay for 3 years, and not win a national championship. That is wild. That's nuts. But I also think, too, at the same time, because he's had that consistency and not just winning the conference, also winning national championships, I think it overall does skew, I think, everybody's view, when you look at it, because you're like, well, because we're talking about Bo, 13, conference titles in 20 years, that is legitimately dominating the conference. But because he, the national championships aren't there, then we point to the bowl records and things like that. It's it's, it skews the view, I think.
Yeah, but that's where context comes into play, because if you were to phrase the question, well, was Bo Schembechler's era in Michigan a dynasty in the Big Ten? Then I would say, okay, I can see that. But when we just say dynasty, I think about in general, are you a dynasty in the history of sports, right? And I'm just like, nah, I can't say that. But you're saying the history of the Big Ten, sure, I can say that, because
that still happened though. But you know what I mean? Him winning the Big Ten championships, that still happened. Like it, you
Man,
know what I mean? So
I get
to
it.
me, it's still a dynasty
The
just
Big Ten,
because of
but winning
the.
the Big Ten isn't the pinnacle of the sport. You see, if winning the Big Ten was the pinnacle of the sport, then then I can say, well, you achieved the highest possible. You've done you've achieved the highest form of winning in your sport. Then that's why I think it's the box you have to check first, and then how many times are you able to do it, and then within what span you're able to do it, how consistent you were in that around either at that level or close to that level. That's why how I look at it.
I think the difficult part is when you look at how the sport was. I guess vote how they picked their champion. Like it was very odd back then. You know what I mean? Like the best two teams didn't play at the end of the year every year. And it was just like the voters. They just voted. And like Mark said, like sometimes they Ohio State just got picked over Michigan. Like it literally they just got picked. Like it's kind of it's interesting. I just thought it was a really it's something that just kind of sparked in my mind about if people would think of Bo's tenure as a dynasty. I personally I would. I get it. Yeah, the national championships aren't there, and the bowl records, like those things are all valid. But I still think 13 years out of 20 winning your conference, I think that is a dynasty. Because and I mean I looked at searched up like when they won the conference, things like that. I mean, there were some times that it listed like 71 through 74. Like it didn't just list like every year. Like I mean, that's crazy to think about. Like, yeah, we won the conference 3 years in a row. And it kind of made me think about even Ohio State and Urban Meyer and Ryan Day's tenure, to where, for Urban Meyer was 7 years, Ryan Day's going on his fourth year. So 11 years, and they have won the conference, I think, I don't know, I would guess 7 or 8 times in that, in that span. Maybe a couple fewer, but that's the thing too. Would you consider Ohio State in their current run? Let's say Ryan Day moved on right now to a different position. Would you consider their block, Urban Meyer and Ryan Day's collectively? Would you consider that a dynasty?
Just in general, or in the context of the Big Ten?
Well, just in general, it's just whatever you want to.
Nope. No,
Give me 1 second. Go ahead.
In general, yeah, not in general. But I would say in the context of the Big Ten, yeah, you can say that. Because they've dominated. The Big Ten over the last let's say Urban Meyer got there in 2011. So you're talking about almost 11 years. Yes, absolutely a dynasty within the context of the Big Ten. And hit their adversaries in the Big Ten and how much they've won and all of that. And then you could top it off with saying they've actually gone on to win a national title as well. But in general, I wouldn't just put the word dynasty next to Ohio State. No, when it comes to Urban Meyer and Ryan Day's tenure.
Okay.
That sounds like a mouthful, but I'm just saying, like it's. I just can't throw the word dynasty out there that easily.
So in your view, then there are very few dynasties.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And that's, I think that's fair.
Yeah, I mean the 1990 Bulls are a dynasty.
Well, I mean, yeah, but see, I think so. Here's the thing: I think had the NBA had the NBA just ended the regular season and then just picked a champion, and the Bulls didn't win it 6 out of those times, I think it'd be looked at a little different. I'm not saying because part of it is that's how they picked the national champion in college football at that time. Like, it was weird and odd, but it almost made it not a fair, you know what I mean? Like it just, I don't know how to put it. I mean, I guess there's no perfect way to pick a champion. I think the playoff is better than the BCS just because there's more margin of error for teams, but there's no perfect way to do it. But
we were texting about what is it? Is it hard to win a college basketball championship, or is it hard to win,
that was another thing I wanted to talk about. So so I text Dre. Is it harder to win a college basketball national championship or a college football national championship? For me, I think it's harder to win a college football national championship, and here's why. Number one, there's very little margin for error in order for as far as a path to a national championship in college football. 2 losses and you're done. You don't I mean that's very clear. 2 losses, you're not in the championship. And when you think about it, I mean that's roughly not what? So 20% of your season in a, let's call it 15 game season. 20% would be 3 games. So let's call it 15%. So you can lose, less than 15% of your games and even have a shot to get there. Number 2 is the amount of talent that you have to acquire in college football to win a national championship. Like it's very clear that you need to be in a 3-year window, roughly top 7, top 6, as far as recruiting ranking. So it's not just getting one guy. It's not getting Quinn Ewers. It's not getting Arch Manning. It's getting, 10 Quinn Ewers, 10 Archie Mannings, everything for basically a 3-year stretch. And on top of it, you have to develop those guys as well to get them to a point of performing at a high level in college football. Because once you go to high school to college, there's a huge difference there. And I just look at the number of players on the field. Like I could be a star defensive end, and although that's a very impactful position, I'm 1 out of 11. Whereas in college basketball, you're talking 1 out of 5 guys on the court, and you impact both ends of the floor. I impact how much we score, and I also impact how well we defend. So those are my reasons why I think it's easier in college basketball, because I mean you could be and it's extremely rare, but you could be a 10-loss team, right? So they play roughly 35 games or so. You could be 25-10, right? So I have 10 losses on my record and still be able to win a national championship. Like that just doesn't happen in in football. You won't get a shot. So that was my thought on it.
Those thoughts, and it was well stated. So good job. I'm not condescending. I'm serious. Like it's a very good argument. But the reason why I said basketball, and it wasn't to, create a talking point and go against you just to do it. I can use some of those points that you made and flip it. And for one, let's go from a
hold on. So flip the point that you can only lose 1 game in college football and still have a shot.
Well, okay, I can't flip that one. Okay. So maybe not that one. But here's what I would say, though. Just as near perfect that you have to be just to have a shot. You have to be near perfect, literally.
Are you talking about college football or are you talking about basketball
college
right
football
now?
In your regular season. Just
Yes.
to have a shot
Mm-hmm.
to compete to win a national title. It could be that the word I want to say is finicky in the NCAA tournament to survive. Because unlike college football, just because on a given day you have the better talent compared to your opponent on a basketball court, all it takes is that guy who is not as good as you being hot. We've seen, like MSU in 2014, they were a 2 seed going down to Middle Tennessee State because Middle Tennessee State hit like 15 threes, right? Something crazy. And there you go from a legit national title contending team, that was a great day for me, by the way. I love seeing the Spartans lose. You see them lose to a team that has no business and no opportunity to really win a national title. And I just think that there's just so many things that can go wrong for you on the way to win a national title in basketball. You got to win more games as well. Compared to in college football, if you're able to win the talent gap in terms of recruiting, you're essentially you're there, because it's not really much that you're going to have. It's not really much you have to worry about. more times than not, actually, I'll say 98, 99% of the time, if you are a more talented team on a football field, especially in college football, not the NFL where it's a lot of parity, but in college football, you're going to win. And you're probably going to win easily. You know, compared to college basketball, that's not always the case. So,
but see, on your point of somebody getting hot, I mean, I could say the same thing about football. Like you could just, you know what I mean? Like you could
hot and beat the better team in college football. Never. It's always
who did Purdue? Didn't they play Michigan State and beat them?
That's not getting
David Bell seemed pretty hot to me. He had what, 250 yards, 300 something yards.
He had the worst pass defense this entire year.
Okay,
terrible matchup. That's a matchup problem, not a talent problem. Well, let's go hand in hand. You know what I mean? Like that was just like, hey, this is a random matchup.
Right.
Problem.
You say it's random, but we also, Mark has given us the stats that you could basically look at the top 25 teams every year, every week, and basically, what did he tell us? 20% of those teams are going to lose. I think he might have said more. Some of those teams are going to lose every single week. So the talent argument, no, that's actually not the case. Not 99 times out of 100, maybe 6 out of 10 times you'll win.
Now I can make your point for you, right? The University of Michigan isn't known for basketball. When you think of University of Michigan, you still think more times than not, and you think football, right? But if you really think about it, in the time span of 1997, which was the last national title that Michigan won in football, they played for 2 national titles in basketball. And no, they didn't win the title, but it can show you just how getting hot. See, that's why it's kind of difficult playing the random day card, because it can work in your favor, because you can be, you know, I would say brand wise, Michigan basketball isn't as big as Michigan football, but yet you could have better success because you got hot at the right time, right? Compared to in football, really getting hot don't mean nothing. You can be an 8-0 Missouri State going and play in Tuscaloosa, no one cares. Matter of fact, you can be Appalachian State and won 40 games in a row. Alabama don't care. They're much better than you, and we're gonna run the score. So I don't know.
You brought a very poor. I don't know why you picked Appalachian State.
Corey has my back. Corey has my back. You know, the dance is hard, man.
I'm not saying it's not hard, but it's also hard to go undefeated or 1 loss in a regular season. Because and think about this: how many ways can you win your conference in football?
How many times?
No, how many ways? You can only win it one way, right?
Yeah, on the field.
Have the absolute best conference record in your conference. In basketball, I can win it by having the best regular season record, or I could win our Big Ten tournament. So I could potentially win the Big Ten. I've got 2 different opportunities to win the Big Ten, and now I think so. Winning the tournament is an auto seed. I don't think regular season is an auto bid. Correct?
Well, if you're dominant, essentially yes. But no, if you.
But it's not an auto bid.
No, it's not an auto bid. But
correct.
You know, winning the tournament is an auto bid.
I don't know. I don't know. And like Antoine just said, you basically got to go undefeated in football to get to the championship. And think about this: if in basketball, if you get to the Final Four, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to play the 4 best teams in basketball. It just means you're just playing the teams who are left. In football, you are going to play the 4 best teams with the number 4 as an exception, right? So it's seemingly the top 3 is a gauntlet. Number 4 is a toss in, whether it's Cincinnati or Notre Dame, Oklahoma, whatever the case.
Not, they always get dragged up and down the field.
Yes. Well, because they play the number 1 team. You know what I mean? They're playing the best team. So I think.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say I think that's part of it too, because and to be frank, I think the last time I filled out a bracket was last year. I mean, there were I think of the 4, the Final 4, I think there was like 2 or 3 1 seeds. So you're more. Well, I don't want to say more likely than not because I don't have the numbers behind it, but it just doesn't necessarily mean that you made it to the Final 4. You're going to play. There's the 3 other best teams are there. Those teams are really deserve to be there, but it's almost a war of attrition, essentially. It's just like, we're here. In my head, I kind of picture, four guys showing up. Everybody got black eyes, bloody nose, and you know what I mean? On one crutch, like, hey, I made it. I'm here.
Yeah.
That's why I think it is a little more difficult in football, because for football, you just don't have a margin for error for what you got: September, October, November, December. For 4 months, you have no margin for error.
Right. And to be quite, you're not going to see a Loyola Chicago equivalent program in the college football playoff. Okay,
Cincinnati's probably all the best you can get.
Oh, leave the Bearcats alone, man.
I'm like being serious about that. Like, that's probably the worst team we've seen.
Well, that's why it's always a false equivalency with some people who are in favor of expanding the playoff to like 16 teams. Like, oh well, you get a bigger pool, then maybe you won't see Alabama and all these other, blue bloods winning it and being in it every year. No, you'll see the exact same thing. You put in a 16 seed versus Alabama. Oh my God! Like, are you kidding me? Or versus Georgia? Like, stop. So it's like I think they're both really, really difficult, but for very different reasons. I think once you get to the tournament, there's a lot more that can go wrong for you, even if you are the most talented team, right? In terms of your path to win it all, compared to in football, I think the overall path is harder.
In which route you said?
Let me rephrase this. I think the path to win a championship in college football and college basketball is trickier, but the path is harder in college football. Did I say basketball or football?
Repeat that. Say it slowly.
I see,
because you're mixing it up.
Twisted. I think the path to win a national title in college basketball is tricky because there are different things and funny things that can happen along the way. Like run into a team that's lesser talented but it's hot that day. That can derail your season. However, I think the path in college football is tougher because there's little room for error, and you do have to beat the best of the best. So I think they're both very, very difficult, though. Very difficult.
Well, I think for college football, college basketball, you essentially have to get hot at the right time. And that's, once March Madness hits, if you can start to get hot, and even if you're a team that you're on the bubble and you get hot through your conference tournament and you win the conference tourney, all right, cool, we got an auto bid.
And Walker 2011 Connecticut.
Yeah. Essentially, that like it, but that's also rare. I'm willing to recognize how rare that is. Yeah. But at the end of the day, that's essentially what it comes down to is I need to get hot. And think about this too. I mean, in the tournament, you need to win. So there's 2 games in the first weekend, right? You'll play that Thursday and then Saturday or Friday and Sunday. But it's 5 games, I think, get you to the national championship, something like that.
Well, just do the math. 68. You start off 68 and you end up with 2. So it's 68,
well, let's say 64.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry. You're right. I was including the plan. So 64, 32, 16, 8, and
4.
then 4. So 5 games. You're right.
To get you to the Final Four. Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing too. In a basketball sense, I mean, that's just a hair over 10% of your season. Like you just need, you know what I mean? Like you need to go on a 5-game win streak to get to the Final Four. And Corey, who friend of the show and just friend, mentioned like he did say act like you just trot to the Final Four though. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that it's a cakewalk for anybody. It's definitely not. But then that's essentially what you need. Say it again.
It's more matchup based too, Desmond. I think football, matchups be damned. My guy's just better than your guys. Which one? Basketball as well, college basketball in particular. It's really matchup based as well because play style is everything, and then personnel. Because if you're a team that's, very skilled, you got guys that, this is not a basketball show, but you have guys that shoot more and, versus a team that's more based on size. Well, that particular day, even if the team with more size has more like pro talent, It's just so happened that other teams able to outshoot you, so they can just survive and
Yeah.
move on. But they're not, quote unquote, on sheet of paper more talented than you. So, and I think those are the type of weird things that happen in a tournament where matchups really are everything, and luck of the draw compared to football. I mean, X and O's are huge, of course, but at the end of the day, it's about, that talent on the field. And if your talent is there, I mean, how many teams with elite talent every year in college football don't end up at least in the national title game? It's rare. It's really rare. That's why you see the same occurring teams every year, because they do have the same elite talent out of everybody. Teams like Michigan have good talent, right? Teams like Alabama have elite talent. That's the difference. Teams like Georgia have elite talent, right? Teams like Ohio State, I would say really good to great talent at times, right? They're not, they're kind of between where Michigan is, which is good talent every year, and Alabama, which is elite talent, kind of really good to great talent, right? And it always shakes out more times than not. And that's why 2014, when Urban Meyer, beat you guys, it was a shock, because it was like, wow, this guy went, took his SEC background, went to Ohio State, and beat the man in Nick Saban, on a neutral field. So it wasn't like they were in C-Bus, right? That's what made it so impressive. Matter of fact, I think it was in New Orleans, right? So it was down south. So in the Superdome. So it's yeah, man, it's one of those things. It's mostly about talent more times than not. But it is interesting, which is why if they bring it back to Michigan football, if you ever want to be on that level, the reason why you asked me, right? Like, hey, what do you have to do to finally get past to Georgia? I'm like, I don't think there is anything we can do unless something unforeseen has happened, because we need to recruit at such a level where we're on par with them. If you're not recruiting the 4 and 5 star kids consistently like Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, those guys are, you'll never get to their level. It's the haves and have-nots.
Yeah, it is a very difficult thing to do to to beat a team who's more talented than you, especially in football. But we do see it a lot, though. We see upsets all the time. I think a big thing that plays into it, number one, is underdog, right? So when it's just you're the underdog, and then the favorite just kind of relaxes. Like you see it all the time where teams come out, they're kind of sleepwalking, they're not, they don't have it together, they don't have their normal intensity, and then you also see mistakes happen, like whether it's interceptions or fumbles or just blown assignments. So there's things that can definitely happen that can, that spell the recipe for an upset. Which in basketball, I mean, basketball's tough because missing shots is just part of basketball. You know what I mean? Like, so it's difficult to look at, Duke with Zion. Like, they lost to, I think, like, I can't remember who they lost to, maybe a mid-major or something like that. Did they lose Michigan State? Yeah. But nonetheless, like, when you see a mid-major, beat a highly ranked team, especially tournament time, a lot of it is the skill that you were talking about. Like, you see, mid majors, you see typically juniors and seniors, guys who have played a lot of basketball, who are experienced, who know, they may not know this moment of the tournament. This may be their first time there, but they just know their routines. They know how to control their emotions when it comes to, right, the bright lights and things are, kind of chaotic. They know how to keep that calm, and they're also skilled. Like, they might not be, a lottery pick, but you put me in that corner 3 wide open, I'm nailing that 9 out of 10 times. So it's they're both unique and they're both very difficult. I want to be very frank with that. But when you look at it honestly, like, I started looking at past national champions in basketball, and a lot of it were the same teams. Like, it wasn't a huge variance of. Yeah, I mean, you had Villanova, Kentucky, Duke. Syracuse was in there. But I mean, when you look at the last, 10, 11 years, it hasn't been, just a list of 10 different teams. It's been a lot of the same culprits, year in and year out. Virginia obviously, got over the hump. What was that, last year or the year before? but it really hasn't been a huge variance. Obviously, it's been more variance than football has had, but that I think with football, essentially, I mean, it's just the rich get richer. Like when you're able to build on so much talent, like more talent wants to come there and win. So it's very difficult. But I looked at basketball national champions. I'm like, that's not a huge list of separate teams.
In football, you can't scheme 2-star kids to beat out 5-star kids.
Well, I can't scheme a guy to run past Minka Fitzpatrick. Like you have to be able to do it.
You have to run past him. Son, coach. It's like Friday Night Lights when Billy Bob Thornton was talking to the guy on the sideline.
It was Christian, yeah. This is what are you seeing out there, son?
Big.
Coach, they big, they fast, they mean, they dirty. Coach, they fast. Coach, you said that already, son. You already said that.
Yeah, but you can't. But you can try hard as much as you want to, but it's like, it's a kid a 2-star kid a receiver that runs a 4.7 ain't outrunning a 5-star kid running a 4.2. Okay, it's just not happening.
Yep.
It is what it is.
Oh, that's funny.
I mean, you have a slow 2-star corner out there versus a 4.3 5-star receiver. You man, hey son, look, we're not doing no man-to-man today. All right, so I need you just to keep him in front of you the best you can. Don't fall for any fakes.
No.
Do not let him get a step on you, or and then with more times than not, what happens? It happens anyway, and the guy ends up hitting his head on the goalpost. It's just you just can't out scheme the football. I mean, you when the talent's closer, you can. Yeah, that's right, Antoine. Give him a 20-yard cushion. Anything else than that, that's it. So it asks Brandon Watson. It was
you will not let that man live. You listen, okay? It is 2022. I am trying to give people more grace. You need to do the same thing. You listen, that was a long time ago, okay? Why are you living in the past, okay? Do you know how many days it's been since Ohio State has beat Michigan in football? Do you know how many days? And look at you focused on the past. Look at, you know what?
So.
You know what?
62 to 39. Oh no!
You should be seeing 42 to 27. I don't even know who you are right now. For what you have asked for and begged for, you have it, and you're bringing up the past.
Hold on a second. You have to understand the emotional letdown that way. That was like one of my lowest points because of the emotional drop I experienced in a 24-hour span. I went from talking on Friday to you talking about how excited I was for the game and talking smack and having playoff images in my eyes. I'm hearing how we are favorites and how Ohio State is limping into the game, and I'm seeing it with my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I went from that to bam, we're down. We giving up 60 points, and everything's just going awry, and I'm falling asleep literally by third quarter because I'm like, I can't bear to watch this. So no, I'll never forget that. And you're damn right. I'm happy with my team.
Let me reenact your phone call because we're getting ready to wrap up, but we're okay. But so folks, just to let y'all know, Dre and I would talk to each other on our commute to work, and we're still working together at this point.
No.
Okay,
no.
So we weren't working together at this point.
Recap football.
So
weekends.
We would talk to each other, on Monday. So our Monday morning drive, we hop on the phone and Bluetooth, and we're both driving to work. And so it was like it was a normal thing. So I'd call him, he called me, whatever. Hey, what's up, man? Like blah blah blah. Dude, did you see the Lions? Like, oh, they stunk it up. Whatever, blah blah blah. So it would always start off like, because we're friends, as a normal conversation. But this Monday morning, phone rings. Cool, I answer. Hey, what's up, man? I want all the smoke. We want Bama. Ohio State, they should have lost to Maryland. They should have lost. That quarterback one-hopped it. Man, they're lucky to even be undefeated or one loss at this point. We gonna beat them, and we coming straight for Bama. I want Bama. That's what we want. Michigan, we coming for y'all. We want Bama. And I was just on the other end of the phone, like, oh, I'm like, I can just hear the joy in your voice, number one. I'm like, but number two, what I would say is just taking one game at a time, man. Like, you still got, rivalry game. You never know what could happen. I told him, look at me as an Alabama fan. We've had plenty of national championship seasons ruined by Auburn and those scrubs. But I'm like, just taking one game at a time. And I could hear the excitement in your voice. It was great to hear. And that same excitement I heard from you when you guys did beat Ohio State. So yeah, you were very excited, but it was it was hilarious. So when Dre says he had the letdown, yes, he was that high. I mean, I will venture out to say I don't think I've seen you that excited, even on this channel, whether it's a Wednesday or after a post game.
It will never happen again. They'll never get me like that. They'll never get me like that. Yeah, I'll be proud of them. I'll be happy, but they'll never get me like that.
You gotta let yourself back. You gotta let them back in, man. You gotta let them back in.
Hey man, look, once you've been, it's just like, in relationships. Once you've been jaded once, man, you gotta protect their heart to a certain extent. They broke my on that day. November, whatever it was in 2018. They broke my heart.
That was a tough one.
Because it was like it's one thing to be in the where you feel powerless, like you just feel absolutely outclassed, but it's another when it's your rival and you feel outclassed totally by your rival. Mm-hmm. It's such a debilitating, what, who am I? Like, what are we? Like,
especially when you were favored, and up to that point, you were playing better football.
And Ohio State
they should have lost to Maryland. Yes, they should have lost to Maryland.
The quarterback, I don't even know what his name is. He's not even playing there anymore. I still can see the play. Like, it's a 2-point conversion.
Rolling out to the right. He had a guy. They had a bunch set. The number one and number two went inside. Number three was wide open, ran a little arrow route, and he just literally one hops it. No pressure, nothing. Just one hopped it. Could not believe it.
One of the easiest throws you can have. Easy throw. Didn't have to fit it in a tight window.
As soon as I saw the play develop, I'm like, oh my God, he's got him. And then he one hopped. I'm like, oh, I couldn't believe it. I mean, I remember vividly watching the end of that game. And I'm like, Ohio State's about to lose this.
He looked so stupid. He had that same look that he had 13 versus Michigan when they were in that game. Like, he looked like, what is going on right now? And everybody's looking stupid, like Ohio State sideline, like, I can't believe it's happening, and it's like, I think that was like a four-win Maryland team. I don't think they even went to a bowl game that year. Had no business in that game. It was.
Of course, that was when, because Ohio State was playing in a close game, Urban Meyer had a headache, so he was showing all of the signs of he's bent over. I'm like, dude, come. I'm like, if you're having serious brain issues and headaches and things like that, like that stinks, that sucks. I'm like, but you never seem to have the visible pain when you guys are blowing teams out by 40. It seems to only be happening when you're close to losing. Like, that just seems odd to me. And maybe it's stress induced, but it was very odd to me. It was very odd.
Apparently he doesn't even know who great NFL players are. He didn't know who Aaron Donald was and all this stuff. Did you hear about that? He was like, who's that 99 guy on
Yeah, I heard about that.
I hope he was joking. I really hope he was joking. It just like, now granted, I will say this. But no, I can't say that because I was going to say maybe he's was so engrossed while coaching college football, he didn't really pay attention to the NFL. But I'm like, that's impossible. For one, he was 3 years removed from coaching before he took the Jags job. So it's not like he wasn't watching whatever.
Maybe he was so busy teaching his, I think, ethics course or something like that at Ohio State, where he had to prep on Sunday for his ethics course.
What a disaster! You're talking about coach, you talking about coach with. I don't think there's another coach with as great cachet in terms of winning. Urban Meyer has with as much just ugly, just what the heck type stuff around him. And he's one of those guys where most people, including myself, even today, I'm about to make some people upset.
Oh, I know what's coming.
if you gave me like, okay, right now, I can change the reality, and you can keep Jim Harbaugh, or I can give you Urban Meyer. Even today, Desmond, I would take it.
Really?
I know a
Even with
lot of
all the
people
mess
don't.
that just happened.
I know a lot of people don't share that.
Whew.
In terms of winning, I
Mhm.
know for sure I'm going to win with Urban Meyer. I know Jimmy did it. Not gonna take it away from me. You're talking about a guy.
I think he's
Now
losing
he's
a
gonna burn it
lot of
down.
the shine. He's lost a lot of the shine.
But look,
Because to me, I think he'd be coaching
it's
right
not
now
one
if he
stop
wanted to.
though. But it's not one stop. If it was one stop, Des, I would agree with you, right? Like, I mean, like for Jimmy, for example, like he started to lose shine not only because of how lackluster the results were at Michigan, but because he was getting further and further away from his time at Stanford. And you're like, well, hold on a second, was that him or was that a generation quarterback in Andrew Luck, right? Where
Mhm.
Urban Meyer, it's like, well, hold on, really good success at Utah, really good success at Florida, not really good
But then
success
you
at
get
Ohio
but
State.
before you move on from Florida, you gotta talk about the issues and stuff there. So yes,
No,
really good success,
I said,
issues
I
there.
said I said it's very, very, what am polarizing. He absolutely, he may be the most
It's a little
polarizing.
more than polarizing. Polarizing to me would be when Lincoln Riley was at Oklahoma and goes to Dallas, the Cowboys. I think that would be polarizing because you're like, oh, he's a college coach. Is that really going to work? Like, that'd be more than polarizing. He is a
You
winner.
don't get
I'll give you that, but you gotta think Florida issues. Yes, had success. I can't remember why. Didn't he leave Florida for medical reasons? I think he did leave Florida for medical reasons, if I'm not
I think
mistaken.
he was burnt out, and time with family is what it was.
He
I think
was
that's
Saban had caught up to him and started kicking his butt. That's what happened, and then so he retired
look,
or
man.
whatever. Then
We
goes to Ohio
still,
State.
as college football fans, we still never got what we all really wanted. We all really wanted Urban Meyer to go to LSU and see that tandem back and forth. That's what we all really wanted to see, but it never happened because look, all I'm gonna say is this, and I think GOJ said it great. Is that yeah, like Urban Meyer's gonna leave you in tatters, but you will host an attic. And that'll be like the thing that's your reality. Is the juice worth the squeeze? Are you
Whew.
willing to like take your program's being in shambles for a couple of years to recover once he leaves for one national title?
But
One national
isn't
title.
the whole point of winning the national title? Number obviously it's the pinnacle, but isn't the point to have that catapult you into further success? Like, isn't that the goal?
You would think so. In an ideal situation, Urban Meyer takes to your program. He revamps it and makes it a perennial power, right? And you
Mm-hmm.
win the national title. By the time he leaves, because he's not feeling well, his successor is in place, right? Now his successor is going to have a lot of mess to clean up, but
Who wants to do that?
hey, look, Ryan Day's has been doing pretty well on third base, don't you think?
True. Yeah, but what's Florida been since he left?
No, that's the trick. That's the thing. Now, and that's the thing. Like, maybe as an administration, if you're going to take, I think he should get one more college job. He's just worth it. Like, if you're a school like, let's say,
you gotta be a school
Florida,
that can reasonably win a
maybe not Billy
championship.
Napier, huh?
I said you gotta be a school that's reasonably can win a championship. Like he's not gonna go to Boston College and win a national
No,
championship. That's not gonna
no,
happen.
no. But let's say Florida State, right? Like
Okay.
he would be a great fit at a Florida State or Miami, right?
He
Like
would need he would need to be at a South school, one
yes,
that is diehard football. We don't
diehard
care.
football
We
and
just
has a
want to win a
brand. They
championship.
have to have some kind of brand recognition, and all they need is just the guy. And and it has to be like, look, it's either or Auburn. Like it's just when it's natty and nothing else matters.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing else matters. We'll deal with the ramifications afterwards. But you win it's natty, that's all we care about. And I think he will eventually because he's just worth it. Especially for those type of schools where football is king, and you just want to get in the mix, and you're willing to like. I'm still shocked that Texas hasn't gotten him. Like if you're Texas, football is everything. You have the oil money, and now you've seen what Jimbo Fisher is doing potentially at A&M. Like, yeah, you at a certain point you get desperate, and it's like, you know what? Blank check. Just do what you gotta do, man. Do what you gotta do.
You better set
And Urban
aside
Meyer's one of those guys.
you better set aside a couple million for a lawyer to keep on retainer, because that is coming. Lawsuit is coming.
Last time I checked, there's still plenty of oil rigs down in Texas, so they should be able to afford it.
There are. Wanted to shout out Antoine Johnson. Thanks so much for the super chat. He said, good show, y'all, which appreciate it. Yeah, man. I think that's it for us. I like our new time, 5:30. How about you?
Well, I mean, I have no choice but to like it. But
Well, hey.
I know the ever-changing world, and we're just changing with it. So it works fine with me. Guys, as always, thank you so much for your support and your loyalty and tuning in every week. We're just counting down, getting closer and closer. Before we know it, we'll be talking about preseason kickoff here soon.
No, what's coming next is spring ball is over. Transfer portal season is going to hit again. So that is coming probably next couple weeks. And one last thing is, I mean, really, that's the time. If you think about it, Joe Burrow made his departure was after spring ball from Ohio State to LSU. So who knows? Maybe somebody's going to get their transfer quarterback who's soon to be a national championship quarterback. So we shall see. But thank you, everybody, for tuning in. As always, we appreciate it. We love being on, and we appreciate your support. So thanks, guys and gals.
And, by the way, I'm not. I was going to say how Dad's not supposed to play basketball, so I'm sure he's going to bring up some story about that next week. So
yep. We'll see. Maybe we'll hop on the stream after we play some basketball. But it'd be cool if some Michigan news broke like Friday night, where we could talk about it after basketball on Saturday. So we'll see. But yeah, just pray for us that we don't get hurt and we come back. So especially Dre. So all right, that is it for us. All right, peace, Dre. Thanks, everybody.